Hey, this is Eddie King Roeser from Urge Overkill, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and now down in downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Eddie King Roeser from Urge Overkill.
Fantastic interview.
Yeah, now this is a big highlight for me because Urge Overkill's soundtrack of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only is he the soundtrack of your life, but he's also a Chicago resident, which we're really close to, so we were excited to have him.
That's one of the things that when I first found out about Urge Overkill, I just drawn to me the Chicago aspect of being an almost local band because we're a couple hours away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, he was a fantastic interview. Let's get to that interview right now.
All right, good night.
Good night. Eddie, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I would like to introduce to you my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Eddie, this is going to be fun to talk to you tonight.
Hey, nice to meet you. Thanks.
Well, as COVID-19 restrictions are being lifted, how did you stay busy during the pandemic?
Oh, man, I have to say I was very happy to not have that feeling of, wanting to missing out on things. And as you get into the pandemic further, you realize whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. And I guess I'm a little more introverted than I thought because I was pretty happy with it. And I've been able to spend a lot more time playing. I guess I've been getting better as a musician. Most people, I guess, can either want to play less or more, but I did find myself sitting around with a lot of free time, so I did a lot of dexterity building in my, it's kind of geeky stuff, I guess. But, I always marvel at how much more or how my naive younger self, how later I've been able to figure out more about how songs work. And I guess I realized that I'm glad that I didn't know, because it was sort of having music be the sort of mystical, impenetrable thing. The more time you spend with it, the more you realize that every song is basically some other part of another song in disguise. And when you're, busy writing a lot of stuff, I guess I'm glad that it says something about not knowing everything, or maybe not being trained in music theory.
Yeah.
I've sort of managed to figure out a lot of the tricks of the trade over the years, just sitting around with the guitar. And I've been tinkering with other instruments my whole life, so I'm gone crazy with, acquiring some drum sets, some synthesizers, and learning how to play other stuff. There was always time to, I guess, if I got bored with one instrument, I would go to the other. So I just have a pretty good time entertaining myself, to be honest. And I guess I never have had that much time uninterrupted to just kind of sit around. So I'm pretty proud of myself for, picking up some more skill. I feel like I would be, I've got to somehow take this out on the road. I'm not sure when Urge is going to be going out, but I feel like I'm glad that I was able to feel inspired the whole time. I didn't do a whole lot of recording, just more like just getting better at playing to the end of my limits, basically playing until my hands hurt. Never really done that, and there have been times when I didn't even want to look at a guitar. So anytime that I feel like inspired in the least to keep going, it's, the older you get, the more you're glad to feel psyched about anything,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know discussing 2022 is premature, but there are plans for a new Urge Overkill album, I guess, in 2022. Can you talk a little bit about the plans of this new album? How far have you came about? How are things going?
Well, I guess most of the details of that have to do with, we had some extensive already recorded. We had recorded a lot of stuff since we sort of broke up for years, and then we put out one more record and did some touring, and that record had a bunch of songs that kind of were enough to make another record. So we ended up kind of finishing off some of the stuff that didn't make the first post-breakup record. And, we toyed around and messed around with the sequencing and things like that, and managed to make a pretty decent set of songs out of it. So I guess we didn't really ever we didn't specifically record. We sort of recorded over the years enough material to put out this other record. And I guess since we had more material, we didn't want to use the same arrangement, record company, and things like that for the two records. But since things changed and we felt like there was enough of a good response for the first record, we wanted to keep going as a band. It's good to always have something out.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's all I could say about it. It's gonna depend on what people think as to which record is better, because I guess we sort of thought we picked the best songs for the original record, Rock and Roll Submarine, but these are also ended up being pretty good because we went back and did some more recording on top of stuff that was older, and you can change songs around once you get some distance from them.
Yeah.
Kind of cool to go back to something after a few years and come up with new parts and kind of change it around. It's pretty amazing what you can do these days with the software compared to when we first started recording in a pretty much a software-free environment. You really had to commit to your songs, which was, I think our band was able to benefit from having to commit things to tape and not go back and worry about it too much. So I guess I could go on, but there you have it.
Very good. Good, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. So talk about Rock and Roll Submarine. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of the writing and recording process of that album? One of my favorite songs off that is Effigy.
What was the song you referred to?
Effigy.
Oh, yeah. That was some workings of a song that I've had for quite some time and was going to there were actually a few recordings of that song that we worked on that for a while and re-recorded it, but that song comes from way back in like the Bush era, and it's sort of a little bit has some Bush era lyrics in there. If it shows you how that's probably ancient memory for a lot of people, but it's a classic sort of angry rock banger. Yeah. I always like that straightforward, real straightforward sounding guitar of some of my 80s metal heroes. That one to me sounds a little bit like Judas Priest in a good way.
Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted to take. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Well, I kind of wanted to take this back to pandemic. The use of technology now, especially during the pandemic time, where you can't get into a recording studio together, where you're emailing attachments and Dropboxing things to one another. What is your preference these days? Even if we're talking about non-COVID-19 restrictions, do you prefer recording your parts by yourself and then Dropboxing or sending them to Nash, or do you prefer getting into the studio the old-fashioned way?
Yeah, we generally find it more fun. There's more spark going on when we're right there together. Since we didn't really come up with that style of working, we never really took to that type of that to actually putting parts down. We might send some ideas back and forth, but in terms of like working on the parts remotely, that might be something we might get into, but we didn't really warm up to that. That's something that's still on the horizon for us, I guess. We didn't really work like that. I guess we've said we were going to, but we never got around to it. So it's been pretty much showing up and banging stuff out at the time, and then going back in the studio together. A lot of times we'll have songs where most of the songs are completed by one person, but it's always good to have somebody sort of take over the studio, either myself or Nash, and sort of make some progress on our song, and then one of us lingers in the background, sort of listening for a inspiration, and sort of guides the song from, it's good to have somebody have some distance from a song and be able to come in and hear whether it's going off base or not. It's a tricky business because, you have to be open-minded. And I think now that, as we both live longer, I think you get a little bit more set in what you want and a little bit less open to other people's ideas in terms of, it becomes harder. It became harder for us to collaborate. I'll be honest. And, some of the drama surrounding our problems, in the studio when we broke up the first time had to do with, those sorts of things where, not wanting to the other person intruding on your song. It happens in a lot of bands when bands that are slightly democratic. It's amazing how much, this stuff can affect people to the detriment of their band. Like, the more music documentaries I see, the more formulaic you see these disagreements always come in, and it's always just sort of a dumb ego thing. Anybody who's not in the band really doesn't care where the songs come from. And you just kind of have to realize that it's only a big deal in your own head and step back a little bit. So, hopefully we've learned to do that, but it gets harder as you get older for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
It gets harder to define. It also gets harder to sort of define what songs make, when you're playing less as a band in front and getting less feedback immediately, you get crazier ideas about what song would be like even an Urge Overkill song and what song isn't.
Yeah.
So you tend to include weirder and weirder stuff in the tent, and that can really, mess with the other person. You're sort of like, man, that doesn't even sound like Urge to me. Like, what planet are you on? But hey, that's all part of like, then now that the stakes aren't so high, I guess it doesn't really matter anymore. But that used to be a really big decision, what song. When studio, I still remember, we made the records I'm most proud of during the times when we had very little, there wasn't like extra, what you spent time on in the studio, you didn't have a computer at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You didn't have all that much access. So it was really it was a heightened drama over what you were going to even spend your time on.
Yeah.
And, just the more of these behind the music things you see, you're just like, oh God, that happens to everybody. Yeah. It's tragic.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's all in the past now. I mean, I laugh over some of the stuff we argued over, but hey, we're alive to tell. That's the main thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and are you guys good friends again?
I will say that we've reached more of a, now that we're spending time together more because we want to rather than because we have to.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, I mean it's always it's always changing. It tends to take things forever to get done. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you kind of answered my question about because you guys had produced your Rock and Roll Submarine album, but can you compare and contrast, because you've worked with some pretty big names in your, as you were starting out in your career, you worked with Steve Albini and Butch Vig and the Butcher Brothers. Can you kind of compare and contrast working with those guys?
I guess we really did when we came up our first, we were sort of helped when Steve Albini was putting together his first studio. He sort of had moved from an apartment, and one of us was living, Nash was living there, and we, among other people, sort of helped build out the studio in that first house that Steve rented. So we were kind of like the official guinea pig band that we were sort of happy to have Steve sort of experiment recording Urge, and some of our first LP was among the first stuff that he did on a tape player at his own house. And I think it sounds pretty cool. Yeah. Still to this day, he had a very specific way of miking stuff up, and I just really like the way it sounds because it was kind of unrehearsed. It was just this kind of idea that he read about, how you mic drums, and we set him up, and just the way it worked for our first record, Jesus Urge Superstar. We've got a song on there called "Your Friend Is Insane," which is, I think, one of the first things we did, and a few of those songs were done in his home studio, and a few of them were done in this shitty little studio that we had access to. But I remember it was right when Steve was starting to record music, so you wouldn't have called, he wouldn't have said, "Oh, I'm producing." He always was at pains to say that, "I'm an engineer. You guys go, play what you would. I'm not going to tell you what to play. I don't believe in making a comment. If you're an engineer, you're supposed to make, you're really more letting the band be the producer." And I guess when we wanted some more, help, or we wanted somebody who was going to maybe have a different approach to where to put the vocals in the mix and things like that. We did through touch and go, having had various artists record with Butch Vig. We did that for our second record, and so that was a little more of a co-production. And then the third record, Steve agreed to do it again, and that's probably the one that we took some pretty, I think, we took some ideas that were sort of funny and outrageous, and did on that third record we did with Steve, Supersonic Storybook.
Yeah.
We did some cool things that were sort of more, we did it really quick, but I really just liked the results of that. After that, we had recorded with Kramer, who had basically a few ideas by playing some piano on one of the songs, and he had the studio that had this special kind of reverb, and he added a lot of THC to the mix. It was really always smoking. I had never seen a guy smoke more than that, but so that was sort of our pre-production time, and then we did work with these guys who really knew a lot about recording, the Butcher Brothers.
Yeah. When
we got onto Geffen and did our records with them, they had a reputation for working with hip-hop people, but they actually were these twin brothers who had studied all the books about how the Beatles recorded their stuff, and they had a lot of ability to really execute any idea that we wanted to have. So that was really great to sort of, once you have some time and some money to sit around and really not have the clock be your big enemy, we were able to pretty much finally make the time pay, and really use some of these production values or use some of these production tricks that we didn't understand how they were done, but we would say, how does it, like how does like Steve Miller do this or whatever? And they always knew. So we used stuff like backwards reverb, and we got out, some more keyboard, some synthesizers and some electric piano and things like that. They sort of helped us flesh out the music. And I'm really proud of those. If you go back and listen to the production on those records for Geffen, the Saturation and Exit the Dragon, I just really think have, you could tell those are all done on like the vintage Neve board and all the fancy sort of sound geek stuff that people talk about. We were able to, get that out of our system and really make these sort of, I don't know, vintage sounding recordings. Just by the nature of the gear that they had. We had tape machines, and we had, like I said, vintage compressors and all that. So that was our jam for a while.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
But, and after that, once you've done that and you're sort of satisfied, we didn't feel as, once you've been in like a really great studio, you just sort of trust your ears as to, we were less finicky after that about having the best equipment to record with. You more can trust what you're hearing with your ears. And we became, I think, more, obsessed with whether the performance was cool rather than the sound quality. There's a lot you can do in mastering and whatnot to kind of fix things that sound disparate that maybe you did at home. That was sort of the style, is to go a bit more lo-fi again. But I guess I'm getting off track. Go on.
Kind of speaking of Geffen Records, as you had spoke about, Urge Overkill was assigned by Touch and Go and then signed to Geffen after that. Can you kind of talk about the transition going from Touch and Go Records to Geffen Records and the pressures that it probably would have came signing with such a big label like Geffen?
Yeah. Well, I can't complain about that. I guess during that time we had been around enough as a band, and we're able to, I think, go into the. We since we weren't the very first of our kind to go over and sign to a major label, there was some. It wasn't completely unheard of to make that move, and it sort of took a while. It's something that happened pretty gradually, but we really did get to have. Well, we had pretty much we had a pretty wide choice of what label we wanted to be on. Mm-hmm. We did get offers from most of the major places, and it pretty much came down to the guy who's going to be your A&R guy was the first guy who sort of had been following the band the longest, and we didn't even really know. He didn't really know how to get a hold of us, and so by the time we did hook up with this guy, he was at a different part of Geffen that wasn't the same A&R guy as Nirvana and Sonic Youth had. Mm-hmm. But it was the same company, but it was a different guy. But we knew that they had a good operation, and we were by this point working with somebody who had pretty good knowledge of the people working there. And I have to say that we had a pretty good, I felt we had pretty good treatment at the label, and we made a good decision in terms of never really having a problem with being at loggerheads with the label. Most of our problems with Urge were of the self-inflicted variety, where we really, by the time it was time to, put out our second records, it really was, Kurt Cobain had killed himself by then, and that, like, any kind of hint of, like, somebody on their roster that had any kind of drug rumors or high drama, right at that time, we were not great candidates for, clean living. By that point, there'd been a lot of shenanigans, and things got back to them where they actually gave us our shot, and we were, for, I could go on, but we were, I think, in a situation where, of our own making, where we were not really, not getting along so great by the time our second Geffen record came out, and we just had a chance to continue on, without Blackie. And, the label president said, we can go ahead and continue your contract. And me and Nash at that point, the relationship was just so toxic that we both decided that we'd be better off, parting ways for a while, because somebody was just there was gonna be no records being made without drugs around. And I think we sort of felt like everybody was in danger of really having a bad result and making a bad record. I guess for me, I can speak for myself that I really felt like, yeah, we could have continued our deal with Geffen after Exit the Dragon, but I fully convinced we would have made like a friendship ending record, and just a record that was not made out of joy, but only because we had a contract to make a record. At that point, we were not in the mood to make a record together, and that's what we would have had to do. Nash and I probably find somebody else to play drums again, and we had sort of started the band as a duo and had gone through various drummers, but I felt like at that point we both decided to hang it up. And then some things happened after that I won't go into, that I think drove us apart even further and made it just untenable to get back in the seat. But I think had we been able to see around our differences at that point, maybe taken a year off and then decided to keep making records as Urge Overkill, probably would have been the right move. But hindsight is 20/20, and or not always, but it's in the end, I think it would have been better to have kept in the game and kept trying to I think we lost some major momentum there at a time that it probably wasn't wise to drop out of the game. We were coming off Pulp Fiction, and it was one of those things where I'm glad that I guess we weren't forced out of the game. We decided to take ourselves off of the Geffen roster, and we were, neither of us were to have that level of success again. And you don't expect that it's going to happen, but in hindsight, I think we probably should have taken some time off and then patched things up. Things were happening so fast then that it's inconceivable to think, take some time off, but that's really what we should have done. I guess we both sort of tried to have some, do some solo stuff that I think both of us felt like we kind of got bogged down and we're unable to really reach once you've played in like a real rock band that has developed some chemistry over the years, it's really hard to manufacture that again, or if it's not there, if you're not feeling it, it's pretty hard to just kind of to go through with it. And I think we both kind of lost our mojo when we lost our main band.
Yeah.
And, time has a way of cooling things off. So we got sort of, Jack Black was a longtime Urge fan, and he agreed to appear at our reunion as the warm up, and so those guys were instrumental in sort of helping us get back together and do a reunion show. After that, we did some recording pretty soon after that, because we were getting along and it was fun, and before you knew it, we had all these songs. So that took forever, of course, to make Rock and Roll Submarine, but at least it got made. I consider it a huge victory that, that's the last thing we were thinking of is that we would ever make another Urge record, but we actually managed to make one, and I'm pretty happy with it. So this next one is going to be more material, more from that era, rather than really brand new stuff. But a band like Urge, we're not changing our sound so much. At least, I'm surprised at how much like the old Urge, the newer Urge sounded.
Oh, cool.
More like it. Once we got done with it, it was much more like earlier, like Touch and Go style Urge than we realized.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
That was cool that we were able to kind of keep the sound without really trying.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Jeff, you got another one?
Yeah. So you were kind of alluding there that when you guys broke up, you'd kind of tried to do some stuff on your own. You worked with Jim Kimball from the Jesus Lizard. I think the band was called Electric Airlines. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Now, did you guys ever release any material as Electric Airlines, or was that?
I've actually, we did a demo that ended up sort of being what I thought was releasable, and we weren't 100% happy with how we finished it, but we did. Unfortunately, that band consisted of myself and a couple of local friends and my younger brother John Roeser.
Cool.
That was called Electric Airlines, and there is a bootleg, sort of a tape of the record floating around that may or may not see some release, and I can say that there might be some merit in going in and remixing some of that stuff. Yeah. And so another thing I did do a record with Jim Kimball called the Kimball Roeser experience, and Kimball Roeser Effect, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes. And we actually did have a deal with, it was going to come out on Matador, and the record's done and it mixed, but that record, that both of those bands sort of ended before the record. It ended up we weren't going to tour the records because the bands were ending, and I was having some problems during both of those things. And the records just never, they sit on the shelf to this day, but ran into Jim Kimball and this new label that we're working with may be an outlet for releasing that stuff in the future. So I'm not going to rule out releasing this record that I did with Jim Kimball, as well as the one that I did with my brother John. And he's got a band too that has a great catalog that are not well known, but if you're interested in Urge, definitely check out the Innkeepers. That's my brother's band, and got some really cool stuff. He just self-released a record lately. That's the Innkeepers, but he sings and plays guitar. He's about 9 years younger than I am. And we're always talking about the idea of getting back together and doing some playing here in Chicago before long. But we'll have to see. Right now, we weren't sure about this new Urge record, and right now we found somebody who's pretty excited about putting it out. So I don't know if they're doing the contract and all that stuff right now. So, but I do plan to get back in and do some playing with Kimball and also my brother. Jim Kimball was also in Electric Airlines for a while.
Okay.
And John and their styles sort of clashed, so that wasn't great for me because I could sort of play with both of them, but those two kind of couldn't play in the same band.
Yeah.
So there, things I just tend to get bored pretty easily, and I really should have stuck to it and put those two projects out, but it just didn't happen. And I'm always convinced there's something better and new on the horizon. And once I'm sort of done recording something, I'm sort of like, okay, I'm over it. I could do something better next time. So that I'm gonna reassess that and listen to that we spent a long time on that Kimball Roeser effect thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we had a name for it, but it's a mastered record. And it just some things fell through with Matador that really took the wind out of my sails. We were gonna put it out, and they had all these young kids working there who sort of said, well, we're not really into this. They went heavily into sort of electronica at that time, and it was sort of an about face that really kind of was a tough blow for me. I was pretty fucked up at the time, so I went into a pretty bad spiral after that, and didn't really get it back together for a few years till a few years later. So, but now, I've had a pretty good, I've had a pretty thorough rest. Right now, I've got a kid who was subsequently finished high school this year and is off to. He's going to be moving off and going to college. So I'm looking forward to hitting getting back into the game in a heavier, with more commitment now that, I've got that whole having a child thing out of the way. If you can believe it. That happened fast.
It does. It really does. When you, this is more of a gear question. So when you play live shows opposed to studio time, do you have a certain set gear that guitars, pedals you use for the live show opposed to when you're in the studio recording? How does it work for you?
Man, I've always been kind of convinced that I found the setup, and that's one thing about sort of not playing in a touring band where you're setting up and playing every night where you can figure out what you even like. I'm not really playing enough shows where I know like what guitars I would take out now, but it would sort of depend on the project. So the answer is no. I haven't been able to really, I've realized more that I kind of play to the gear rather. I sort of feel like a certain combination of guitar and amp cries out to be played in a certain way. So I'm gonna play to that, whatever that guitar and that amp wants to do to sound cool. I'm gonna get inspiration from that setup rather than saying, oh hey, I've got this sound in my head and I've got to go through 10 amps to get what I want. I really get that and it took me years to realize this, is that the reason I have like 20 amps laying around is because I'm going to write a different, whatever, like guitar, like most of my stuff is guitar based. So whatever, that combination, if it has like a certain, it almost wants to do the certain riff in a certain style that it's going to shine best. So I've sort of found, turning it around rather than, I'll try different stuff out, different combinations, and just a slight different feel will produce the ultimate sound for a certain riff, and hopefully you sort of remember that. A lot of times it only goes as far as like getting the idea, and then you can manage to make it sound pretty good on anything. But I've kind of realized that part of the thing that I find endlessly fascinating is that, it's more like finding the voice of whatever these amp and guitar combinations or possibly effect have to, what is the perfect riff for that sound ends up sort of coming out. And I guess in that way, I can justify having all this stuff, lying around that I've got piles of amps now. And, I think they all sound great now. They're just a little bit different, but everything has its own thing it does well. And so it gets pretty tough to settle on one thing because I just haven't been out, playing. And that's another thing is, you have to, depending on what you're doing, what songs you're playing might influence what guitar and amp combo I might want to, or if Nash is going with a certain thing, I might go with something different. I kind of missed that whole part of it of going out, and hopefully we'll be able to go and do a major tour at some point, because that's really the pleasure of having a rock band, is like really playing every night, and you really can make incredible leaps and bounds in what a band can do when you're not stuck doing these one night things where it's I really prefer the touring and what can happen. It just gets to be a lot more fun, and it's a lot easier. Nobody rock, you want it to be easy and make it, feel easy. And with the music that we always played was always just a little bit beyond we would write music that was a little beyond our ability to really just stand up and play it. So we were a band that we really did benefit from having some time on the road to we really couldn't really get it down so that the first show was going to be a guarantee. It was always like a crapshoot with Urge, and we were unable to really hit the professional sound when the spotlight was on us. We weren't quite as good as we needed to be. So that caused some problems, I think, in our career, in that, it was we kind of kept the roughness around the edges because there was just too much fun being had in other areas,
Mm-hmm. I was fortunate to see you guys live in 2015. You came to our hometown here in Rock Island, playing at Ribco, and you were doing the Rock and Roll Submarine promotion.
Yeah, that was one of those things where that wasn't like a tour that really had enough dates to really get off the ground.
Yeah.
So I liked that version of the band and all that, but I'd like to be able to come out and really do a longer tour where we're playing everywhere. Hopefully we'll get to do that again.
Yeah, I hope
with
so.
This next record coming out.
All right.
So
I have one last question.
Thanks, guys. Okay, sounds good.
I have one last question for you. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. So back in 2018, Urge Overkill and Naked Reagan Cheap Trick opened up for the Foo Fighters at Wrigley Field. Can you talk a little bit more about that opportunity and how it all came together for you and the rest of the band and the other bands? How was it put together? Can you talk more about it?
Well, it was kind of this crazy thing where Dave Grohl, who we got to know the Nirvana guys pretty well, sort of pre-Courtney, pre sort of soap opera when those guys were really just kind of a rock band on the rise. And because I guess Dave had always had this thing about Chicago because, Evanston, he went on a very influential trip when he was a kid. I think he was about 10 or 12. They had cousins who lived here. Mm-hmm. And there was this incredible sort of local scene where he hadn't really seen. It was right as like punk was happening or hardcore was happening in DC where Dave grew up. But it was just sort of a tribute to his. He was able to see Naked Raygun and when he was a young kid at an all ages show here. So he sort of wanted to put all the bands that he associated with Chicago on this special bill at Wrigley Field.
Nice.
So we got to, obviously for me that was a big deal to, I had the Cheap Trick posters on my wall when I was a kid. So, okay. To me that was a bigger deal than touring with Nirvana. That was sort of like, they sort of came up as the same time as we did. So it's more like playing with Cheap Trick. That was really like playing with the rock gods to me. Yeah. But we got to play, and have our faces on the big Jumbotron and all that. And it was a really cool show. We were on it was a long day and not the driest day at Wrigley Field. So Urge we're lucky we got the Jumbotron because it was still, we played a little earlier in the day, and then Cheap Trick played, and then Grohl played. But yeah, it's pretty amazing to look up and you're at Wrigley Field and your face is like 30 feet wide on a screen half a mile away from you, Yeah. It's really weird. I'm not used to that like Dave Grohl is. Yeah. But hopefully it can happen again.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're out of our allotted time. Before we let you go for the evening, is there anything else that you would like to plug or promote that we did not cover tonight?
I think I got everything in there. Just thanks, you guys, and I appreciate, whoever wants to, the Urge legacy is out there. If you want to, for those who don't know what's up with Urge, hey, check out, there's always some crazy show going up on YouTube. There's a show of us playing in 1987 at the Metro that just went on to YouTube that I can't believe this footage. I had no idea anybody even had a camera around back then, but somebody just put this thing up there. I don't know if it's still up there, but we took it, or somebody from our fan club thing took it. And so there's, you can go through we've got a lot of cool sort of the videos that we did for Touch and Go were some of the first, sort of, we had some good comedy ideas. And I think that there's a lot there for people who don't know about the Urge world that you can check out. And we'll have yet another record coming out before long.
Oh, very good.
I'm excited.
This interview will be ready to go in about 3 weeks, and when it's ready, I'll send it to your PR person, and please share it on your socials.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And, see you down the road, I hope.
Absolutely.
Right?
Take care.
Good night.
All right.
China. Fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their